Hi, good afternoon. This is Meredith Lego, and my channel is on Ascension Science and the expansion of consciousness. And today I'm going to be talking about a subject that has to do with another planet called Nibiru. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I received a few channelings from a collective consciousness who I work with that actually had to do with Nibiru, and they both came in actually quite unexpected. It was a topic that I didn't ask, but I started to receive information just coming through on that topic. So for those of you who don't know or haven't heard about the planet Nibiru, before I share the channelings that I received or the information or the downloads that I received, let me give you some history of Nibiru and how this planet came to be in the consciousness of Earth at this particular time. So basically, there was a gentleman who studied economics in the University of London between 1920 and 2010, named Zachariah Sitchin. And so he lived between 1920 and 2010, but part of his expertise was actually being able to read some ancient languages, specifically the Sumerian language, I think Sanskrit. So essentially, he was the first person who basically developed some theories around the origins of Earth and mankind. And it had to do with origins that man was essentially created through another alien race, or basically evolved with the help of another alien race. So he was able to essentially read and interpret the Sumerian and Akkadian clay tablets. And his interpretations basically found, and he published this in a book that was called, I'm just kind of reading, The 12th Planet, that there's a 12th planet beyond Neptune that's called Nibiru, and it reaches our inner solar system once every 36,000 years. And according to him, an advanced race of human-like extraterrestrials called the Anunnaki lived on Nibiru and essentially helped with the evolution of Homo sapien at the time. So what his story is that the Anunnaki arrived on Earth. His timeline is about 450,000 years ago. Not sure if this is true or not. I've been actually learning and practicing how to read galactic Akashic records, so I might, ask and try and explore that myself. But essentially, they came here at that time looking for minerals, namely gold, and they essentially landed in Africa and really started to do mining for gold. And some of the miners, basically, like anybody else, kind of got displeased with the working conditions and were tired of doing mining, and they didn't want to do it anymore, and sort of started to revolt against the leaders of, I guess, their colony, if you will, doing this work. And in order to help solve this problem, some of the leaders essentially decided to genetically engineer a group of slave labor, if you will, by blending together the genes of a local animal on Earth, which was essentially an ape, with some of their genes, and they essentially created Homo sapien. So whether that's true or not is, obviously to be, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just sharing you where the term Nibiru and where that planet originally first came up. So a couple of, I think it was last week, I was just meditating and all of a sudden got information downloaded to me. And I'll share that. But in addition to that, I'm also going to share another channeling that I got probably about a year ago that also had to do with the Anunnaki Collective. So they, basically they were a race. And whether or not they're from Nibiru, I don't know, but they were a race. And that's what this second channeling is about. So basically, the first message that I got this last week really is that Nibiruian history is stifled with deceptions and lies. It lies dormant in the wings of time, lifeless. Once it was a star that drowned through misaligned axitonial lines from the center breath. So that's all I got, and it's kind of cryptic, but let me interpret it, because I was also kind of receiving images as this information was coming through. So basically, Nibiru history, what they're saying is stifled with deception and lies. Now, I don't know what history that is. I'm not sure if that's the history that Zachariah Sitchin has been exposed, or if it's actually another history that has to do with this planet that we're not aware of. So it'll be interesting to explore that topic. But they're saying that it essentially is, it was a star, which is different than suggesting it's a planet. Now, I could see a connection, because in another session, I did receive some sort of information that stars and planets can be one of the same through the evolution over time. I don't know how long that takes, but I guess that could be the case, right? So they're basically saying that it's lifeless. It once was a star that drowned. An interesting choice of words. And it drowned through the misaligned alignment of its axitonial lines, which is basically suggesting that there wasn't a strong flow of energy that was flowing through the planet. And there wasn't that sort of alignment of energy coming in from the center breath, which basically means the central sun, which is the source of a lot of energy that kind of emanates through our galaxy, our Milky Way. So that's basically it. So they're basically saying, hey, it's a star. It kind of died because it just didn't have that alignment. Now that's pretty key, because essentially a lot of, I guess you could say, light workers on our planets are really working on trying to correct and strengthen the axitonial lines and the ley lines of planet Earth as well, because they have been adjusted over time. So, I'm sure there's some piece of us in our seed DNA that has memories of some form of this history. So that was the one message that I got around Nibiru. Now, as I mentioned before, about a year ago, I also received another message, not necessarily around the planet or the star, I guess, but it was more around the Anunnaki Collective. So the information I got is that patterns from the past surface again. The time loop access brings opportunities for lessons to be learned again from a new perspective and vantage point. This is the time for some beings to put down past events and pick up a new path forward. The Anunnaki Collective were in coordinated energies with the Thoth Collective. The intention was, and still is, to leverage sacred ascension mechanics, the God-given right to all beings, and use them for strategic advantage. The edifice of the past will be stripped away. These collectives are recycling back to another planets or to other planets to continue lessons. So that was actually pretty interesting, and I just chose not to share it at that time. But essentially, if you go back to some of the early teachings that I shared, and they actually came from Ascended Master Hilarion. One of the lessons that I got was how essentially energy flows through time, and it flows through any being or any galaxy or any atom, basically in the form of sort of an infinity loop, but it kind of flows through a torus field. And basically, that you can have experiences where you're kind of having a lesson. So you've got sort of an impulse to do something. So you're picking up an impulse to do something from the field, and you're drawing that in magnetically into your field. If you could, you're kind of like electromagnetic field comes in, you get impulsed to sort of have a certain thought, and then you essentially take that into action. You experience that action, you process it, you learn from it, and then you kind of go through another cycle. And essentially, during those experiences, we always have choices of what sort of actions we're going to take, what sort of emotions we're going to have, what sort of thoughts we're going to have. And with every thought, emotion, and action, we're emanating energy out into the quantum field that basically can produce sort of what I've done another video on, which is the cause of law and effect. So cause and effect, excuse me. So it's a law of cause and effect. So anything you put out is going to be matched by something coming back. And so through not just your life, you're going to have many experiences of going through cycles of repeat lessons through the law of cause and effect based upon the energies that you put out. And even more, as we go through different incarnations and different lives, we also can re-experience patterns of lessons until we sort of learn how to overcome that pattern. And that exists not just for an individual being or soul, but that also can exist for collectives of souls. So let's say a whole community that might be coordinated in their consciousness. They're not learning from it, and they'll continue to go on repeating certain patterns. So what this message is saying is that patterns from the past have surfaced again, and we're experiencing, because they did mention the collective later on, so the Anunnaki Collective, we're experiencing a time loop that is bringing opportunities for certain lessons to be learned again from a new perspective and vantage point. So I'm not sure if that means, I guess that has to essentially mean that there could be certain individuals on the planet, maybe it's a collective on the planet, that possibly have Anunnaki incarnations in the past, where they, and as a result, we are being presented with another opportunity for a lesson, in which there might be the opportunity to make a different choice than was made in the past. That can help evolve overall all beings for the better, for the best and highest good, and ultimately reduce entropy. So this time for some being, it's time for some beings to put down events of the past and pick up a new path forward. So in other words, it presents an opportunity for everybody to make different choices than what and it could be, all of us, I'm not sure, or if it could be certain beings on the planet who have incarnated through the Anunnaki Collective to make a different choice. So what they did say is that the Anunnaki Collective were in coordinated energies with the Thoth Collective. So I didn't actually prepare a lot of materials on the Thoth Collective, and maybe what I'll do is try and do another video on that. But essentially, Thoth it was basically a character, that was around the time of Egypt, if you will. And the Thoth Collective, or Thoth, actually had quite a bit of knowledge around Ascension mechanics, and actually had access to a lot of sacred information that was somewhat contained in a secret way, and also was slightly distorted when I think he was sharing it out and teaching different people around it. And it has to do with information that was contained in the emerald CDD plates, which are sort of holographic plates that were presented or kept around human history and the history that goes far beyond this planet of sort of how humanity evolved over millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years throughout the galaxy, if you will. And these plates essentially were there was, I think, about 13 of them were sort of scattered and maintained within 13 different tribes across the world, across Earth, in order to house and maintain that information. And Thoth essentially got hold of one and sort of used it to his advantage, I guess you could say, and essentially used it for personal gain and sort of was spreading maybe some misinformation. Maybe he thought it was the right information because he didn't have access to all the plates, but apparently it created some downfall within humanity overall over time. So they go on to say that the intention was and is still to leverage sacred ascension mechanics, which is the God-given right to all beings, and use them for strategic advantage. So it sounds like the intention was more for service to self as opposed to service to others. And the edifice of the past will be stripped away, and these collectives will are recycling back to other planets to continue lessons. So perhaps there are certain patterns that are coming up for some of these beings who are kind of incarnated again in a human body, I'm guessing, and they're being given a choice. Maybe some are choosing a different outcome than what was created in the past, and some are continuing to repeat the same pattern. And perhaps as a result, they're going to be having another experience in their next incarnation on another planet to keep recycling through that lesson again and continue to learn a lesson. And perhaps in the future, they'll get to a different outcome. And I think that's being said because Earth is heading in a new direction with a new energy, and it really can't sustain some energies maybe that have existed in the past that are more service to self. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it's an older channeling. Again, I said I didn't necessarily share it at the time, but because I did receive something this last week that had to do with Nibiru itself, I thought I would kind of pair the two together. So I don't think there's still a lot of gaps in the information. And maybe I'll explore more about that and explore more about Thoth. So with that, hope this has kind of added to more of your knowledge about the history, not necessarily about Ascension itself, but the history that's kind of gone on around different beings, I guess you could say, in our galaxy. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear about it in the comments section. Otherwise, I will see you in future videos. Thanks very much. Have a great day.